All right, so we're going to talk about extending Healthspan. This is the overview for the special studies course for the seniors taking this class. I'm going to run through just a few topics. And again, this is an overview. We're going to go through extending Healthspan, the definitions of healthspan and lifespan, debunking the fad diets, and looking instead at a multimodal approach to health, and then explaining what epigenetics is, what impacts DNA expression. And through that, we're going to talk about wellness and then the semester class project. Lifespan defines how long a person lives. It doesn't define how well they live. The definition we use for health span is how long in a person's lifetime that they are living in good physical and mental health. This information came out quite a while ago. It's looking at how long a person lives as related to their BMI or their body mass index. So, right at about a BMI of about 24, right in there is the lowest mortality. This is looking at all cause mortality. So, just looking at a person's adipose weight, they're more likely to live shorter lives if they're underweight and also if they're overweight. The reasons for this is that very underweight patients have a poor immune function. They don't fight off infection well. On the other hand, too much BMI causes inflammatory diseases. And when we get through some of the lectures on the physiology, there's a more in-depth explanation of why this occurs and how it happens. So this J-shaped curve has caused people to recognize that a perfect BMI should give them the best chance for a long lifespan. The problem has been is how to find that perfect weight, how to get to it. So this is Charlene taking a more serious aim at her target weight. And we're getting into the topic of fad dieting. This is an example of yo-yo dieting, where people have the before, the after, and then the after, where actually the weight comes back and even more so than before. So, true or false, do you believe that calorically restricting food is needed to reduce weight? True or false? And the answer is false. There is a study through, it's called the DIRECT, it's an acronym for the Dietary Intervention Randomized Controlled Trial, studied 270 subjects over 3 different diet groups, and they followed them over for more than 2 years, actually. And the results of that study were kind of eye-opening in that all of those people that were in the study had significant weight loss early on. I mean, all of them, didn't matter which diet they were in, whether it was low fat, Mediterranean, low carb, they all had significant weight loss. So they all felt like a success early on, but followed over that 2-year period, they started to, all of them, switch to gaining weight back. So all of them started gaining their weight at the 2-year mark, showing that none of these caloric restricted dieting programs are actually sustainable. So I want to present a multimodal lifestyle approach that I came upon back in 2014. This was a multimodal lifestyle intervention study that I read. And interestingly, all the participants had a weight loss, a sustainable weight loss, as just actually it was a side effect of their intervention program for dementia. It was just a pilot study. This means that it only had 10 patients back in 2014, and they all had documented dementia or Alzheimer's disease. And they had individual lifestyle interventions um, prepared for each individual person. 9 out of 10 of them had a complete reversal of their dementia. The ninth had extended, I guess, Alzheimer's disease and did not have reversal. And he was far along in his Alzheimer's disease. And then, as I mentioned previously, all of them had excess body fat loss as one of the side effects of this interventional program. One of the case examples I'll go through, a woman in the study that is still doing well to this day, was a 67-year-old at the time. She was a data analyst, and she was forced to quit her job because she quit being able to remember 4-digit numbers. She was diagnosed with progressive dementia, similar to her mother's, and she had watched her mother die. And so she had made the decision to commit suicide. And it was then that her friend talked her into being part of this study program, this pilot program. She had a personalized intervention program that looked like this, that was this actually. She had a diet program that was elimination of simple carbs, gluten, and processed foods. There was no caloric restriction. Her sleep was increased to 4 or 5 hours a night to 8 hours a night. She had put on a fasting program where she did not eat 3 hours before bedtime, and she had a 12-hour fast between her dinner and her breakfast. Her stress reduction, she did yoga and meditation twice a day, and she actually became a yoga instructor. Through blood work and testing, she had her D3, vitamin D, B12, fish oil, CoQ10 as supplements to replace those deficiencies. And then she was also, besides her yoga and meditation, she had an exercise program for weightlifting, 30 minutes a day, 4 to 6 times a week. And I'll just mention right now that the exercise was not a high intensity. It was only moderate, not mild or intense, but just moderate exercise. So within weeks, she did have a complete reversal of her dementia. She did return to work, and she had a 20-pound weight loss. And as a 6-year follow-up, she's still working, and she still continues with her lifestyle plan. So with this is an example of how wellness is achieved through your lifestyle changes, and perfect weight is what follows. And going through the physiology of all this is what the course is all about. So this particular researcher, like I mentioned, he presented this in September 2014 in the Journal of Aging. And he is now in a multi-center trial that's across the United States with over 3,000 participants. And this is his book, The End of Alzheimer's Program. Now, this has gone actually globally. There was another program that was initiated by a group called the Finnish Intervention Study. It's the acronym is the FINGERS program to prevent cognitive impairment. This has become a multimodal lifestyle randomized control intervention program. And it was also very successful, and it initiated a worldwide program to study dementia and Alzheimer's. So as of 2020, all of these ongoing randomized controlled trials are going around the world and sharing data. And these are all the countries that are involved in it. These are their individual acronyms for their control studies. So I want to go through just a little bit about the rationale behind each of these interventions. The lectures throughout the semester will go through in more detail, in depth about the physiology of how this works. So on the diet, elimination of the simple carbs, gluten, and processed foods is the whole goal is to reduce systemic inflammation. With any type of elevated blood glucose, cytokines, the inflammatory type, are released. And so changing the food types to reduce blood glucose improves insulin resistance, so reduces the risk for developing type 2 diabetes, and then reduces the inflammation not only in the body, but also throughout the brain. Stress reduction with yoga and meditation. Stress, particularly worry, increases the release of the stress hormone cortisol released by the adrenal glands. And it's a cyclical nature. Increased cortisol, increased stress, increases insulin and leptin resistance, so you become almost pre-diabetic, decreased metabolism, and then significantly increases food intake and weight gain. And then that cycle continues. Sleep is a prevention of all these development of these beta amyloid plaques. So the brain contains they call it now the lymphatic system, because your lymphatics that are within your body that cleans up all the waste that is in your tissues is not present in the brain. It's only during sleep that your brain actually gets its cleanup of its metabolic waste through your cerebral spinal fluid. So it's only during deep sleep, so the sleep cycle where you're very deep asleep and it's scattered throughout your sleep. So if you shorten your sleep time, you may miss some of those times when your lymphatic system would be working. So the brain cells shrink, the CSF flows between cells, and the metabolic waste is removed. So fasting is interesting. Fasting, a 12-hour fast between dinner and breakfast. The goal is to enhance autophagy, and autophagy is very interesting. It's a part of the period of time when the body actually self-eats damaged, destroyed cells and recycles all those parts. So you get a regeneration of new and better cells, which is great for the reduction of potential cancers that may form from those cells. And then, of course, lastly, the supplements to replace the nutritional deficiencies. One of the things that happens with aging, particularly, is that the pineal gland in the brain stops producing melatonin at the rate that it produced it earlier in age. So for some of these elderly people, they will start them on melatonin to improve, to enhance sleep quality. Now, we go into talking about sleep. It's very curious because sleep actually is not improved with alcohol or with sleep medications, some of the sleep prescription medications. It actually reduces it. So it is not recommended that people go on sleep medications at night. The exercise is anti-inflammatory. Exercising muscle releases myokines that are anti-inflammatory cytokines. It also increases leptin sensitivity, and with a moderate amount of exercise, it reduces appetite, reducing inflammation. So as I mentioned earlier, this is moderate exercise. Very high intensity exercise, the Michael Phelps type, actually increases appetite. So this changing environment that with these lifestyle changes for the good or for the better. So changing environment exposes the genetics exposes the DNA, these sites on the DNA. This is an example of people that have the thrifty gene. So it's when their BMI goes up, exposure at those alleles on the DNAs increases the risk for obesity, and they become more thrifty in terms of being able to hold on to every single calorie that they ingest. So these external forces that we talked about influence the expression of genetic codes. And this is how it works. So with epigenetics, your DNA cannot be changed, but the expressions of those genes can be altered. So it's the bad man inside, bad man, bad woman inside, waiting for the chance to express themselves. So during the semester, what I teach and what I provide are these in-depth lectures of the physiology of the 6 factors, and critically evaluating research papers along with students, and then editing student papers as they write them. And then we format and print what we call the book. So everybody contributes to a semester book. And so during lectures, students will participate in the lectures, interactive classes where students use a forum called Kahoot to answer questions, to stay engaged. Packback is also an online posting forum. Weekly quizzes to reinforce the information that's presented during class, and then writing a paper for their book. So this is the book from last semester. It was 100 pages, 7 chapters, each of individual essays. So the summary is that I went through is the epigenetics, the wellness factors, and writing the book. So I want to say DNA is not destiny. I like this, the serenity prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. So wellness is a balance of forces influencing the self. The Google Drive share link is here, or you can search YouTube and go under Wellness Field Day Dr. Gustafson.